Excellent. So hello, I'd like to formally introduce you to our Introducing Climate Huddle webinar. We will also be having a special guest speaker from Productpine, which we're very excited about, to be sharing some of their experiences that they've had as a e-commerce business and their journey on sustainability. So just to run through the agenda for today, we're going to go through our welcome and introductions. We're then going to be, they'll have a presentation by Pablo about the introduction to Climate Huddle. We're going to go through a Mighty Networks demo, which is our community platform that we have. We'll then have a discussion with Productpine, which we're really excited about, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session that we'll do live for you at the end of the webinar. These are our speakers for today. So first up, my name is Lisa. I am the host for you today. I'm content manager here at South Pole and the content manager for Climate Huddle. We'll be joined by Pablo Päster, who is the practice lead for South Pole and for Climate Huddle. He's our presenter today, and then we will also be joined a little later on today in the webinar with guest panelist Camiel van Dooren, the CEO of Productpine. Hello, everyone. So what we'll do is Pablo will hand it over to you. Take it away, Pablo.
Great, thanks so much, Lisa. And on behalf of the entire South Pole team that's been working so diligently on Climate Huddle, I want to thank everyone for attending and for your interest in this project that we've been working on for quite some time now. First of all, if you're not familiar with South Pole, we are a climate consultancy and carbon offset project developer. We were started about 16 years ago, are headquartered in Zurich, Switzerland, but have offices all around the world now. When I joined just 20 months ago, we had 350 people, and since then we've exceeded 1,000. So there's a lot of interest in climate action these days, and I'm so excited to be part of this great company. First of all, the problem. The problem is obviously climate change, and that's why we're all here today, and why all of those on the Climate Huddle team are at South Pole. The climate is essentially being filled with excess carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases faster than they can be removed by natural means or technological means, which are still in their early stages. So if you want to go with a metaphor of a bathtub, you know, that's sort of where we're at. We're overflowing, and we need to both turn off the tap, which means to stop any additional emissions, and we also need to open the drain, which means removing those greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere. The other problem that we're facing is specific to small and medium businesses. So the needs of small and medium businesses as far as climate change are concerned are currently unmet by consultants, including South Pole. South Pole is very much focused on the largest companies in the world and taking them on what we call the climate journey. And the smaller businesses are simply not able to afford consulting services from companies like South Pole, nor can they afford the traditional enterprise greenhouse gas management software tools that are out there. Many small and medium businesses share a lack of expertise in climate change and greenhouse gas management. They either don't have dedicated staff to address the problem, or they don't, as mentioned already, have the resources to hire consultants to act in that capacity. And the third problem is that in a landscape where climate action is of increasing importance, staying competitive means taking action. So some companies are starting to feel left behind by their peers and are really feeling a need to act on climate for multiple reasons, but also to stay competitive. We started off with some focus groups, and we were very fortunate to have some great companies join us early on to agree to bounce ideas off of us and really get a good sense of what small and medium businesses face when it comes to climate action. We had some great conversations with Ben at Luke's Lobster. He told us that hyper-corporate language makes it difficult to relate with what needs to be done. Small and medium businesses are concerned with staying afloat, growing their business, with managing their supply chain. They don't have time to learn all of these acronyms. what's N2O and why does it matter to me? Why do I care about RFI when I'm talking about my flight emissions? That is all, what we might call hypercorporate language that makes the world of climate action really inaccessible to people that don't live it day to day. WonderDog told us that their data is all over the place. It's not organized. They've got millions of spreadsheets and Google Docs, and it's really hard to wrap their heads around what all this data means. Planted told us they want to be net zero. There's a lot of interest in net zero these days, but no one really knows what achieving that means. And not surprisingly, that's also true on the corporate side. A lot of people still don't know what exactly net zero means, but we're getting more clarity on that, and we'll hopefully help our members get a good grasp of what net zero means and how to achieve it. And then finally, we're told that by Bechley that they have a desire to be more purpose-driven and leave the planet a better place as a result of their business. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the Climate Huddle. But first, I want to tell you where the name came from. So huddling is a defensive strategy of emperor penguins. You may have seen the great documentary on emperor penguins many years ago. When it gets cold and dark in the winter, they huddle up, they get together, and they're always sort of in movement. When they get warm at the center, they move to the outside. When they get cold, they move to the inside. And together, they essentially keep each other warm and help each other survive. And that's sort of a metaphor that we want to use here at Climate Huddle in terms of bringing together small and medium businesses so that they can thrive together. So the vision for Climate Huddle is that we want to be the place where small and medium businesses take meaningful climate action together. So those are the key words: meaningful climate action and together. So what we have now are a community and an education platform. The community brings together different small and medium businesses so that they can ask questions of each other and of South Pole experts. And it brings us together into a safe place where people can ask questions about climate action, climate change, greenhouse gas management. And it gives us an opportunity to answer those questions by creating blog posts, articles, webinars to further educate the community. But we're not stopping there. That's only the beginning. Next, we're moving on to building some software tools. And we're going to be starting with the measurement tool, which is a greenhouse gas calculator. And for this, we've come up with quite an innovative design, which we're hoping to share with many of you very shortly. And then we'll begin developing that and building that for you with you. Next, we'll have a road mapping tool, which is essentially setting targets towards net zero and understanding what that means, helping you understand how much you need to reduce your emissions and what you might need to purchase offsets for if you choose to. Next is the reduction module, where you'll be learning different ways to reduce those emissions based on your unique profile. So if a lot of your emissions come from a certain part of your supply chain, we'll give you tips and different tools to help reduce those. Next is the compensate module, which will be a integration with our marketplace to allow you to select different projects that we've developed around the world that have a tangible benefit in terms of removing or avoiding greenhouse gas emissions. These are conventionally called carbon offsets. We may also be offering renewable energy credits through that in the future. And then finally, the communicate module will help you and assist you in communicating to your stakeholders in a way that avoids greenwashing and is very open and transparent to show that the great work that you're doing. As I mentioned, this is just the beginning. So right now we're at version 0.1. The community will become public. That means open more broadly when we reach version 1.0. But you will be getting an invitation today to join the community and start building that together with us. As I've mentioned already, we are going to build the tools that the community asks for. So within that framework that I just shared, we are very open to making tweaks and adjusting the design to meet the needs of small and medium businesses like yours. We will also continually answer your questions within the community and support you community members along your climate journey with that educational content and with our answers. In doing so, we're hoping that our members will have the ability to have a meaningful impact on the climate. So how can you contribute? We need help understanding your challenges. They're all unique. We've heard from some small and medium businesses, but we want to hear from all of you as well and understand your challenges. We want you to confirm if the Climate Huddle vision addresses your needs and to provide feedback. We want to hear from you, and we want to be part of your climate journey. So next, I'll give you a brief demo to hopefully help you out a little bit as you join the community. And again, we'll provide a link at the end of this session where you can join. Once you click that link, you'll be taken to a page that looks similar to this. Please go ahead and click the join button. And then you can either enter some information and set up a password, or there's also some buttons down here where you can use Google's single sign-on feature if you're a Gmail user. And I think there's some other options down below there as well. Once you've created an account, you're welcomed into the community. You're encouraged to say hello. So here I'd like to ask you to just give a quick post about your company, maybe your background, your interest, what draws you to climate action, and what you're doing already. And all of the other members will see that and be able to comment on it and welcome you. Once you're in the community, you can see your feed. So this consists of posts that my team has made, sharing articles that we've written, or asking questions such as this to sort of prompt some discussion. On the left-hand side, if you navigate to Discovery, you can also see some of our top posts. And then at the bottom, we have some topics that those posts are organized into. So you can ask a question of either South Pole's experts or your peers. There's some educational blogs and resources. We're pulling in news about the impacts of climate change today, news that contains inspiration for small and medium businesses, maybe some stories of small and medium businesses that are succeeding in climate change, and then finally news on Climate Huddle and updates on the latest developments. So with that, I would like to welcome Camiel to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Camiel is with Productpine. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about what Productpine is and your sort of origin story, where you started?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Pablo, for having me. Very happy to be here. So about Productpine. Productpine is an e-commerce marketplace that helps brands sell directly to customers in a cost-efficient way. We're actually a fast-growing startup from Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, and have a young team of around 30 people in 4 different countries. So what we're basically doing is we're tapping into a large problem in the e-commerce market. The direct-to-consumer market is rapidly growing, and this market is basically an optimization of the e-commerce model. It cuts out the middlemen, which are the retailers and distributors that are between the brands and the end customer. And we're selling directly to customers, the manufacturers, which are also called brands. They ship their products directly to customers without these middlemen. However, that's where brands bump into a problem usually. Selling directly to customers is becoming increasingly expensive. I used to work at a direct-to-consumer brand, and we were spending an ever-increasing amount of money into Facebook and Google, which is getting more and more expensive every year. So each brand basically advertises to attract their own customers, but they do this in isolation, and they don't profit from any cross-pollination or whatsoever. And with Productpine, we are building a marketplace that actually fosters this cross-pollination between brands to actually streamline direct-to-consumer sales. And that's how we're making the industry much more transparent and efficient.
That's really interesting. I think this innovative business model already inherently has some sustainability benefits in terms of the brands that you represent don't have to ship their product to a warehouse and then you have to ship it out. So you're cutting out not only the warehouse but one of those legs of the shipping. Can you tell us a little bit more about your climate journey? Where it started, what motivated it, and where you've gotten to today?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we were basically helping brands to save money on advertising. And we were doing that pretty successfully. Then we started thinking, how can we innovate further and utilize those cost savings of these brands actually in better ways for the greater good? And that innovation mindset happened to actually involve sustainability. So we interviewed many of our customers and we realized that they were actually all struggling with the same things. They were trying to green their consumption behavior, but they were actually tapping into two problems. The first problem was that they didn't actually want to pay more for sustainability, which is something that we'll probably also kind of recognize on an individual basis. The other problem was that customers actually prefer to buy from their favorite brands, right? I'm a fan of an iPhone from Apple, but actually there's probably a bit more sustainable brand called Fairphone, but I'd still stick to my iPhone because I'm so used to it and I like iOS, right? So we asked ourselves, how do we solve this problem and how do we help consumers actually green these consumption decisions? And eventually we landed on offsetting carbon emissions and carbon credits, which brought us to South Pole. So what we're doing now is we're offsetting emissions using climate neutral checkout. And basically what our marketplace now does is we're allowing consumers to buy directly from their favorite brands for the best price while offsetting the carbon emissions of the product's production and logistics underneath that. And the brands are actually paying for this offsetting, and the money comes from the savings on advertising costs, which we're generating with our technology.
That's really interesting, and it's clear to me that you're already doing a lot more than a lot of e-commerce companies out there, but there's always more that can be done. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning to do in the future as you continue on the climate journey?
First, to get here, it was a bit of a stretch, right? We had to research a lot. It was a big process. So we had to dive into what it means to be sustainable and how we figured out basically what carbon offsets really are. So we asked ourselves questions like, does planting trees actually make a difference in the industry that we're in? And we found out that when planting trees, the tree still needs to grow and even stay alive before it reaches its potential. So that didn't seem to be the best option to us. So we were looking at a better solution. So the team actually had to do a lot of digging, diving into webinars, reading reports and research, and trying to piece together the information to get where we are at now. So when we're looking at the future, I think it's definitely an ongoing process. We're in the middle of the roadmap currently. As a platform, a shopping platform, we have a responsibility, but it's also on the brands and the consumers to make a change, in our opinion. And currently, we're not excluding any brands. So we include basically a way for these brands to showcase the impact that they're making on the world by their products and the way that they're adapting to the environment currently. We want to be able to help the businesses also communicate their efforts on the platform. And part of that is also what we do by actually showing the carbon emissions, the carbon footprint, and then compensating those emissions very visually on the platform itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I come from a quantitative background, 20 years of greenhouse gas accounting and life cycle assessment. So I know how daunting it can be to put numbers to, the real impacts of a business. So I'm just curious, did you have any tools similar to Climate Huddle or anything else, or tell me about the struggle really to quantify what you were trying to do?
Yeah, so this is actually a pretty funny story. We were looking for such a tool, but we actually couldn't find it. So I was chatting with some people in my network. One of them worked at the bigger consultancy firms, and they were actually helping some of the brands move towards kind of a better overview of their CO2 emissions. And all the tools he had, and that was kind of the advice I got, was an Excel sheet with kind of an input model and an output model. So then I realized, okay, there's basically no solution out there except for Climate Huddle, which is for us also a pretty convincing peace of mind basically towards the brands, right? We want to have the best solution possible nowadays and also work towards creating better solutions in the future. And currently, I think the calculations that Climate Huddle offers us are the best we can get out there. So that's very convincing in our opinion, also for transparency purposes.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Let me ask you about communication. A lot of companies we speak with have challenges around communicating what they've done in terms of climate action. There's a lot of concern around being accused of greenwashing. How did you navigate that, and how challenging has it been to communicate effectively and share the great work that you've been doing without getting into trouble?
Yeah, I think we're a shopping platform at core, right? So we sell products, and shopping is one of the most polluting industries in the world. So just talking about climate action and sustainable products can be a bit of a challenge if you're actually selling these products yourself and contributing to the problem partly. So how do you communicate about climate action and at the same time avoid greenwashing was a pretty big question for us, because on the other hand, we're also helping brands, right? And they're trying to do the right thing, but they're not there yet. They're trying to get there. So businesses don't want to get canceled because of unintentionally misleading customers. So that's also kind of the promise that we have to hold ourselves to. So as a shopping platform, you also have to consider, for example, sales and promotions that bring in a lot of revenue, like Black Friday, which is coming up, which is, well, a big event for most e-commerce platforms. So how do you approach Black Friday to generate revenue on one hand, which is kind of the purpose for most businesses, right? But not endorse consumerism and actually overconsumption. And I think that one way to get there is actually through partnerships with the brands that we work with. We're trying to collaborate with them on how to create messages to these customers that actually, and also learn from each other in doing that, that actually avoid getting into greenwashing, but also allowing these customers to make a smarter decision in the end when purchasing in a more sustainable way, which we're trying to offer. Yeah, and I think that will be an ongoing challenge, and the only way to actually solve that challenge is through partnerships, because I think that's also what we're good at. We're trying to bundle these brands and bundle their efforts. Yeah.
Yep. Great, thank you. Now, the Climate Huddle is going to be addressing the needs of multiple different sectors of the market: office space, service space, retail, and so on. Are there any challenges specific to e-commerce that you've found particularly interesting?
Yeah, what we discussed internally with our team was actually that currently we're measuring CO2 emissions, which is part of kind of the pollution that the production and logistics and the sale of consumer products basically causes. There's of course also waste, right? Which is a totally different environment. So that's also something that we want to take into account in the future. And currently, I think we have looked around for any models that do this, specifically focused on waste, like the waste whenever you sell a product, produce a product. So that's something that we probably love to explore in the future, perhaps even with Climate Huddle, to find out if we can, well, maybe potentially in a collaboration, figure out a model to also calculate that piece of the puzzle, and move forward there and help brands really bring transparency to consumers also in the aspect of waste, aside of the CO2 emissions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Are you also working with the brands that you represent on different shipping options, maybe promoting ground transportation, train over overnight air?
Yeah, so we're in the Netherlands, so it's a pretty small country. So all the products are shipped locally. So what we're trying to do with that is actually promote greener transportation to the customers and actually allowing them to make a decision on, like, is it really necessary to get the product in the next day, or is it also possible to maybe, well, just wait a little bit longer and receive it in a greener way? That's one thing that we're doing. The other thing is that some of these brands are actually they're moving into kind of the right repair mentality, which is probably going to happen in Europe in a few years, right? So some of the brands that we're working with, consumer electronic brands, their products don't have screws in them, right? So it's going to be very hard for them to get to that demand from consumers that want their product to be repaired. So potentially also in collaboration between those brands within that industry will help them evolve their way of producing, and then help them solve a larger issue of multiple transformations within the industry, like the right to repair, and there are several other elements that will be coming on our way in the upcoming years. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today and for answering the questions for our audience. It's been very interesting to learn about your climate journey, and I hope that you'll be part of the Climate Huddle to allow us to help you as you continue that climate journey. Before you go, I'd love to invite you to share the website of your company with our attendees in case any of them are in the Netherlands and would like to check it out.
Yeah, thank you. It's productpine.com. So I can type it down in the chat for everybody. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Pablo, for having me. It was great being here. Thank you.
And I hope you'll stick around in case there are any questions for you. So feel free to pop back in if there are.
Sure, will do. Thank you.
Lisa?
All right, so just off the top in general, talking about Climate Huddle, Pablo, can anyone join? Is there a minimum revenue or a minimum number of employees you have to actually be able to join Climate Huddle, or is it open to everyone?
So we certainly have a key demographic in mind for the Climate Huddle, but we won't turn anyone away that is looking to take climate action. So, you know, if you're a 5-person small and medium business that is ready to go on the climate journey, then we're happy to provide guidance and educational content for you. And in the near future, some of those software tools that I mentioned.
Amazing. And on the note of joining as well, are there any costs involved with joining the huddle?
So right now the huddle is free to join. In the future, as we develop more of the software tools, we will explore adding a fee, and it'll be small. So you know, that shouldn't be a concern for anyone. And for our early joiners, we do plan on sort of grandfathering you in to the program, sort of as a thank you for being an early member and contributing to the community.
Will Climate Huddle be offering workshops and interactive discussions that members can participate in, or will it just be webinars?
Yeah, absolutely. So webinars are a great way to share a lot of information, but it's typically more or less one way. In addition to the you know, abilities of the community to you know, support discussions in writing, we can also host events right within the community where people can be on mic, on camera, perhaps, and ask their questions and have a lively discussion, not just South Pole Climate Huddle people answering those questions, but also among the SMBs that are in the audience.
Great, so we can talk at people less and actually talk with people more, which is a really
That's
nice way to learn and actually be able to ask questions live, have those discussions, because as we know, lots of great ideas get sparked from live discussions, and great ideas happen that way, so that's great. You said it was a program, but do people have to commit a lot of time to the community, or can they just kind of ask questions when they have them?
Yeah, I mean, we'd certainly love people to be active in the community daily, weekly, but we also understand that small and medium businesses don't have a lot of time for something like this. So we encourage you to pop in and ask a question when you have it. If you have time, if you have multiple questions, please, you know, come into the community more often and engage in discussion with the fellow small and medium businesses. You know, you never know when some synergies will arise, and you might be able to help each other out as well.
If the community is a useful tool, can I invite colleagues and other businesses as well so they can join the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why not, as long as they are you know, sort of the small and medium business, you know, up to about 500 employees. We encourage you to invite your peers, there is a button at the top right once you join the community where you can invite others. So if you find the community useful, your peers certainly will as well. So I encourage you to do that.
What happens, so this is a question about asking questions and how we kind of approach responses. So what happens if I ask a question about something unique to my business and you don't have the answer? Which is a great question.
Yeah, so hopefully with most questions, we'll have an immediate answer to sort of get you going. But regardless, we'll reach out to the relevant experts within South Pole. And like I mentioned earlier, we have 1,000 colleagues, many of which are experts in very specific areas of climate action. So we certainly have the resources to get you an answer. And it might take a few days to get that back to you. If it's something that we can't immediately answer, but we will do our best to get you those answers. And I think that's one of the exciting things about Climate Huddle, that you as a small medium business that normally wouldn't be able to get time with South Pole consultants can actually get your questions answered by some of those experts.
Absolutely. I guess the cool thing too is that if the answer warrants more of an explanation, you might see your answer appear in a blog or actually a longer form kind of answer that can go a little more in depth, which is great because then it can help multiple people. You can learn more from it and kind of have additional resources to answer that question, which is really cool about how Climate Huddle will work.
Yeah, and we might even invite some of our experts into a webinar to present the content to all of you.
Another question we have is regarding if South Pole will promote. So if I share my company's actions and what we're doing, will South Pole promote that what we're doing through Climate Huddle?
So within the community, there's lots of opportunity to share the great work that you're doing. We'll also be putting together case studies with your permission, of course. That'll be available on the website for anyone to see. We might invite you to join us on a webinar and be a special guest, and that will be open to the wider small medium business community as well. So we're more than happy to share and act as sort of a megaphone for your great actions to inspire other small and medium businesses.
Amazing. And actually on the idea of sharing, we actually have a question for Camiel and Productpine, which is excellent. So we have a question here, Camiel, about when you speak to the brands that you serve, what is the most common thing that they ask about or say when it comes to sustainability and climate action?
Well, there's actually a wide variety in how far brands are along the route. So some of them, they actually confess that they're not doing enough and they should do more, while others, they actively want to share what they're actually already doing. So the core component of both of these brands is how can we amplify what we're already doing or take action on what we're not doing yet. And they look for support in collaborations with other brands and in partnerships. I think that's the main topic that these brands are looking for. For one, I really believe in getting through all of these kind of huge steps within the consumer product industry together, because they are huge. There's a lot happening within the industry, and whenever brands, they don't have the time and resources to focus on this progress by themselves individually. So they need a partner to actually allow them to collaborate with other brands who are doing similar things. And there's also part of the cross-pollination, I think, but then in the sustainability component of our business model. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, that's wonderful. So another question for you. You mentioned that you want to understand, so this is regarding the waste aspect of the brand. So you mentioned that you want to understand better the waste aspect of your brand's emissions. If you have that data, then the information, what would you want to do with it? So would you want to offer opportunities to offset, or would you want to try to help them actually reduce those emissions, or is it a bit of a combination of both?
Yeah, so it's twofold. Basically our strategy is threefold. So we start with ourselves, we're reducing, and at the same time informing the consumer about their the emissions and potentially in the future also the waste of the products they purchase. And we do this simply on the product page, right? So if you look for a Sonos One, which is one of the brands we work with, you would see the product page, and then you'd see basically the CO2 emissions that this product creates during production and logistics. But possibly in the future, we'd also show the waste there. Then the next step is the step we do with Climate Huddle, which is the compensation of those CO2 emissions. And in the future, we'd love to reduce those CO2 emissions through this cross-pollination between brands. Also the waste in each of these steps, right? So currently we're not able to inform the consumer yet. So it's hard to compensate if you're not able to actually calculate what kind of waste there's involved in the production and logistics. So first we have to get that calculation in order to then take the next steps on compensation and eventually reduction in the long-term process. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then on the note of calculations, how detailed have your calculations of emissions been so far?
So currently, I think we're using, this is actually a bit of a technical question. So usually this is something that our tech lead handles, but I think it's partly the category of the products, including the origin of the products in combination, and then kind of that calculates the entire CO2 emission, which is, I think, currently the most advanced method to calculate CO2 emissions of products, which is amazing. So possibly in kind of a further stage, you could even use the bill of materials to calculate the exact CO2 emissions. But to be honest, if we would have that solution currently, we wouldn't be able to use it because brands would have to upload this into our system, which they're probably not able to do because they don't have the information themselves. They would constantly have to update it. So currently, I think we're in the most advanced stage already, which is, I think, pretty convincing, pretty transparent, and we're very happy to be in that stage as one of the first e-commerce platforms. Yeah,
that's incredible. So we have a question here about Climate Huddle software. So tools are building. Obviously, we know that we need the tools to actually be able to calculate things and to be able to kind of do all the things we need to do to actually go through all the different steps in the climate journey. So Pablo, how can people contribute ideas for useful software?
Yeah, so the community is a great place for that. So as we advance the designs and the plans for the software, we will be sharing that in the community. We might be hosting webinars to actively get your feedback, demo prototypes and things like that. But beyond that, if you have specific ideas for a tool that you need within your business that we might be able to contribute through the Climate Huddle, then please post that in the community. We'll have a discussion around it. We'll ask follow-up questions. We'll give other members an opportunity to weigh in as well. And you know, that's what it's there for. Let's have a discussion, give us your ideas, and we'll hopefully build it for you.
Amazing. So I think we have time for probably one, maybe two questions, depending on how quickly we get the answers. In the platform then, can I ask questions that are very specific to my business's needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll try to find an angle that applies to more than just one company. But please go ahead if you have a very detailed question about a conversion factor or something like that. Go ahead and post it. You never know; it might benefit someone else as well.
Amazing, great. So we are now at time. But I just want to thank everyone for coming out today to our webinar. I want to give a special thank you to Camiel from Productpine for coming out today and chatting with us. It was wonderful to hear your experiences and what Productpine is doing, because it is absolutely amazing. And we're so thrilled that more people are getting on board with climate action and sustainability. I also want to thank Pablo, obviously, who's here as well, for presenting today and chatting with us through our Q&A and informing everybody about kind of the future plans for Climate Huddle and what to expect. I also want to thank everyone for joining us. And as well, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will have future webinars coming up in the near future, so do stay tuned for that. We will be posting them on the network as well as through our newsletter. So do sign up for that as well. And if you have any questions, please do reach out to us at hello@climatehuddle.com, and we're happy to answer all your questions via email or through our community platform. So thank you again to everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.